Hey everybody, it's me, Vic. Today I'm going to talk about HDR recording. I'll mention some streaming stuff, but mostly HDR recording. I've been really excited to work on this video. I've actually posted a bit of HDR gaming content. Most importantly, the Spider-Man clip that y'all saw that was about 20 minutes long. Anyways, let's get started. I'm excited to show you how to set up HDR recording. And I'll mention again about the streaming part of it, but there's some things that you do want to make sure that you have set up differently when it comes to streaming versus recording. Now I am going to mention I am using a 4080 Super by Asus as far as the NVIDIA GPU that I'm using. There are other GPUs that are capable of this as well using the AV1 encoder. You don't need a 40,000 series to do HDR. 30,000 series are capable of it as well. They use actually, let's just jump into it. Let's pull up OBS and I will talk about that. So first things first, I always start everything out with a blank slate here. And when it comes to recording HDR content, under advanced, you're going to want to make sure that your color space is changed to rec.2100 PQ and your color format is P010. That is the most accurate HDR recording that you can get. Now, as far as for your output and stream, we're going to actually go to advanced and we're going to tab over to the recording. I don't ever do anything under custom, but what I will do is change my video encoder. I am able to use the NVENC AV1 due to my 4080 Super. But if you don't have a 4080 Super and you have a 30,000 series, you can use the NVENC HEVC, and that will allow you to record in HDR. So let's start with that one. And then what we're going to do, I always change my core audio to FFmpeg-AAC. But what I'm going to do is talk about the encoder settings. I always use CQP. And since I'm recording 4K content, right, I want to make sure that it looks good, but I also don't want it to stress out my GPU. I don't run a dual PC setup, so when I am recording PC games, for example, in HDR and playing them in ultra wide, I have to drop it down to P5, and P5 looks great. If I were doing it from my console, yes, I can do P7, so keep that in mind. We're going to leave it at P5 because that is fine. Now, when you're doing HDR under this particular encoder right here, the HEVC, you can change this to main 10. You're going to select look ahead and change your B frames to 4. Now my keyframes, I'm going to change that to 2. I don't know why it was 5. I might have had a typo there. Anyways, that's going to be set up there when it comes to recording, right? So I'm going to click on apply and OK, and we're going to add our card. Now for me, I'm going to actually add 2 sources. I'm going to add my audio source. So I'm going to label this 4KX audio. And I do this and separate the audio and the video because I don't want them to desync, so I want them to be synced up. So I'm looking for my 4KX. All right, here we go. Now I'm going to add my video, which is under video capture device, and label this 4KX video. All right. Now I do have 2 capture cards, but we're gonna, oh look, it's already showing Spider-Man. Alrighty, here we go. So I deactivate when not showing. I'm going to choose my resolution type as custom and I'm going to select 4K. And I'm going to actually copy that, right? Because I'm going to go back into the settings and change it. Video format I leave as is. I'm sorry, no, that's color space. I messed that up, y'all. Video format I choose P010. Color space I'm going to choose rec.2100 in parentheses PQ. Color range I leave alone. And then auto detect, I change that to disable when it comes to buffering. And what I'm going to do is actually mute the video audio and hide it. Now, when it comes to the base settings, I'm going to go back to video and I'm going to change this to 4K and 60 because the most that you can output in a recording is 60. Even though I'm capturing it at 120, and if you really want to see this, I'll show you. Let's go ahead and deactivate that real quick and you'll see what it's running at here in the Elgato software. So in 4K capture utility, there are a couple of things that you want to make sure are going to be set up if you're using this Elgato capture card. Now, you want to make sure enable HDR tone mapping on device when closing software, or you can even use HDR tone mapping on device for your Elgato 4KX. If you uncheck these, I'm going to show you what happens. It's going to look washed out here in 4K. So I'm going to actually restart the software because it's like retaining some of the older data, right? I don't know why it does this, but if I were to relaunch it right now, it's going to look off color. Right? So you're going to see things that are being like, oh, it kind of looks washed out. No. So you want to make sure these are set up like this. And you see how it changed? Right. So now when we enable the video here, it's in HDR. So that's where the reds are popping. The blues are really nice. You're able to see that the street is actually gray and not a bluish color. The yellows are popping. Look at the leaves on there. I mean, it's in HDR. The game is in HDR. You want to make sure in your console settings, right? Let's go to home. So in your console settings, you're going to go to screen and video. Let's change that. I don't like when it does automatic resolution. I like it to be 4K. I don't know why it does that. I think it was because of the update I had. Anyway, you want to make sure HDR is on. You can have HDR to be on when supported, but I always have it on if I'm playing in HDR. Depending on the games that you have, you can either have it with VRR automatic. You can do enhanced image quality for PS4 games. You can do this or not. Some games, if you see that it's kind of weird or behaving strange, turn these things off and it should be fine. All right. And then again, we can open up any game that has HDR content in it. So you see how the reds are red? It's really pretty. The blues are blue. There's no washed out color. But you have to make sure with this card those things are enabled. And that's recording HDR content, right? Look how pretty that looks. I do enjoy Spider-Man, by the way. I actually use this to demo HDR recording. But you see how the blues are blue? And the reds are red? I mean, it looks really good. All right. Enough about that. But that's recording HDR content, right? But if you're streaming it, now I do want to mention something before we actually talk about streaming. I have an AV1 encoder, right? So I wouldn't be using this one. I would actually be using this one. And I would have to come back down here and change everything again. So I'm going to change this to 2. And what you're going to notice with the AV1, there is no main 10. So if you don't see it there, don't freak out. It's actually standard. What I have noticed is that when you're actually recording in HEVC and you upload it to YouTube, it'll indicate HDR. When you're using the AV1 encoder, it shows it in HDR, but there is no metadata that indicates HDR. So it's a little strange, but just keep that in mind, right? Because it's really just an encoding setting, and I personally like using the AV1 encoder. So if you have a card capable of doing that, do so for recording. Now, when it comes to the streaming, right? So this is the next part that we're going to talk about. We need to go back to advanced, and we need to change this to NV12 and this back to 709. And click on apply. So when you're streaming in HDR, as you can see, you don't need to change anything on the video or the audio that you've already configured. The only thing that you're going to do is come here to your output. You're going to change your video encoder to the only one that it permits you to do. You're going to change your bitrate to 6000 because that's the standard. You're going to downscale right here. And I'm going to select Lancos and leave it at 1080p because that is the most that I can do when I'm streaming. When it comes to look ahead, I'm going to change this to 4. And I don't need to change anything else here. I can change this to main if I want to, but I'm going to leave it at high. And click on apply. I don't need to change the rate control here because this is for streaming. Streaming recommends CBR. We're going to click on OK. And if you notice, nothing needed to change on our sources for us to actually indicate HDR, right? So we're still in HDR, and we'll go to properties to show you, because right now we're under video format P010 and color space rec.2100 PQ. You can only do this in OBS currently on Windows. You cannot change anything on the HDR for Mac. Stay tuned for 2025. I will be working on some Mac content for those who have been waiting for me to release some Mac content. Just be patient. I've got some stuff up my sleeve here. It's not going to be instant. It's probably going to be in the mid to later part of 2025, maybe sooner if I'm lucky. That being said, Mac users just hold off for now. This is purely for Windows. But I hope that helps you when it comes to recording or streaming in HDR. Thank you for watching.